Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 1.
It was a rainy evening when Lucy found the doll at an old estate sale, buried under boxes of forgotten antiques. The doll wasn't anything extraordinary at first glance, an antique porcelain figure with glassy eyes, dressed in faded lace. But there was something about the way it stared, as if it knew something she didn't. The seller, a frail old woman with a faraway look, whispered, "Be careful with that one. It's been passed down for generations." Ignoring the warning, Lucy bought the doll and brought it home, placing it on a shelf in her living room. At first, there was nothing out of the ordinary. She'd pass by the doll every day, its glassy eyes watching her from the corner of the room. It wasn't until the whispers began that things took a dark turn. The first night, Lucy woke to the sound of soft murmurs, like voices just out of reach. She brushed it off as her imagination, but the next night, the whispers grew louder. They were faint, unintelligible words, but they came from the direction of the doll. Terrified, Lucy approached it, but the doll remained motionless, as if mocking her. She'd heard stories of haunted objects, but never believed in them. As the days went on, things escalated. The doll would move, slightly at first, then more noticeably. One morning, Lucy found it facing the opposite direction from where she had left it. The next, it was sitting in the chair by her window, staring out into the street. No one else had been in the house. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she told herself it was just the wind, or maybe the settling of the house. That night, things took a sinister turn. Lucy woke up in the middle of the night to find the room freezing cold. She turned on the lamp beside her bed, and there, standing in the doorway, was the doll. Its eyes glistened in the dim light, a faint smile painted on its porcelain face. The whispers were back, louder this time, clearer. "Leave! Leave now! Before it's too late!" She tried to ignore it, but the doll's presence became unbearable. She tried to get rid of it, but every time she attempted to throw it out, it would reappear on the shelf, as if it had never left. Frantic, she did some research and discovered the doll's tragic history. The doll had once belonged to a young girl named Alice, who had died under mysterious circumstances in the early 1900s. Her parents, devastated by her death, believed the doll to be a vessel for their daughter's spirit. But as the years went by, the doll seemed to take on a malevolent presence. It wasn't long before Lucy started seeing things. The doll wasn't just moving now, it was watching her. The once lifeless eyes seemed to track her every movement. She would wake up with scratches on her arms, and at night, the whispers grew louder, more desperate. "You can't escape me. I'm already inside." One evening, Lucy heard the soft patter of footsteps behind her as she walked through her home. She turned, but there was nothing there. Yet the air felt thick with something unspoken, something that seemed to brush against her skin like cold fingers. Desperate to end the torment, she finally decided to burn the doll. She set it in the fireplace, watching as the flames began to lick at its porcelain surface. But the doll didn't burn. Instead, it seemed to laugh, its painted smile widening as the fire consumed it. Lucy screamed in terror, but the doll's face was still there, frozen in the flames, its eyes gleaming with malicious satisfaction. The next morning, Lucy was gone. Neighbors reported seeing her leave in the middle of the night, her car packed with all her belongings. They never saw her again. Years later, another family moved into the house. On their first day there, the daughter of the family found an old doll hidden in the attic. It wasn't the same doll, but it looked just like it. No one ever spoke of Lucy again, but at night the doll could be heard whispering, "Leave, leave now, before it's too late." And so the cycle continued as the doll waited for its next victim to take it home.
Story number 2.
The doll was discovered in the walls of a crumbling farmhouse in rural Maine. The crew demolishing the property found it stuffed inside a small wooden box, sealed with nails and wrapped in yellowed cloth. Its eyes were gouged out, its tiny dress stained and stiff with age. One of the workers, a young man named Kyle, made the mistake of pulling it out and jokingly calling it his new girlfriend. He brought it home that night, laughing about it the whole way. Kyle lived alone in a modest trailer at the edge of the woods. That first night, he tossed the doll on a shelf in the kitchen and forgot about it. But just after 3 a.m., he was jolted awake by a loud bang. as if something had slammed into the wall. Thinking it was a raccoon, he checked outside but found nothing. When he turned back toward the house, he noticed the kitchen light was on. He hadn't left it on. Inside, the doll was no longer on the shelf. It was sitting upright on the kitchen table, facing the hallway, its gouged-out eyes somehow fixated directly on him. Chills ran up his spine. He cursed under his breath and threw it outside into the trash. But the next morning, it was back, sitting on his pillow. Kyle tried everything after that. He drove it 10 miles out and dumped it into a lake. The next day, it was hanging by its dress from his front door. He burned it in a fire pit, watching the plastic melt and bubble into nothing. But that night, he heard something crawling under his trailer. When he opened the door to check, there it was again, clean and whole, sitting on the front steps. Then the voices started. They weren't whispers this time. They were harsh, angry growls in the dead of night. At first, they came from the woods, then from beneath the floor, and then one night, they came from just behind him. "You took me out. Now I take you." Kyle didn't sleep after that. He stopped going to work. His friends stopped hearing from him. One neighbor saw him out by the woods in the middle of the night, digging holes and muttering to himself. Another swore she saw him talking to someone who wasn't there, arguing, weeping, begging. A week later, he vanished. Police were called when the trailer began to reek. Inside, the place was torn apart. Furniture flipped, mirrors shattered, scratches covering the walls. There was no sign of Kyle, only the doll, sitting in the middle of his bed, holding a single human tooth in its little hand. No one wanted to touch it. The police bagged it and sent it to evidence storage. A month later, the officer assigned to the case shot himself in his home. The doll was found on his bathroom sink. Since then, it's been passed from evidence room to storage unit to museum collection, always leaving a trail of misfortune and death. No one can explain why it keeps coming back. No one dares destroy it again. And as of now, the doll has gone missing once more. If you ever find a one-eyed doll with a cracked porcelain face and a stitched smile that doesn't quite sit right, don't touch it. Don't even look at it, because it already knows you saw it, and it always finds its way back.
Story number 3.
When Sarah moved into the old duplex in Charleston, South Carolina, she was just looking for a fresh start. The place was cheap, close to work, and had that southern charm she'd always loved. Peeling paint, creaky floors, ivy on the bricks. The landlord told her the other side of the duplex was unoccupied and had been for years. Perfectly quiet. But on the first night, Sarah heard footsteps next door. They were heavy, deliberate, pacing up and down, back and forth, long into the night. She told herself it was an old house, probably just the boards settling or squirrels in the attic. But every night at exactly 2:12 a.m., they started again. Same rhythm, same steps. After a week, she called the landlord. He swore no one had moved in. The other unit was still locked up, hadn't been touched in over a decade. Curious, Sarah walked around the building and peeked through the dusty front windows of the empty side. She saw nothing but an old couch and a broken lamp. No furniture, no signs of life. Until something moved behind the curtains. She stepped back, heart racing. But when she looked again, it was just stillness. The pacing continued that night, closer now, as if whatever was next door was getting bolder. Then the doll arrived. It was waiting on her doorstep when she got home from work. Hand-carved wood, old-fashioned dress, a cracked painted face with eyes too wide. There was no note, no explanation. Assuming it was some weird gift or maybe from a neighbor's kid, she left it on the porch bench. That night, the pacing started again. But this time, it didn't stop at 2:12. It continued for hours, growing faster, louder. And then came the knock on the shared wall between her bedroom and the other unit. 3 soft knocks, then scratching, like fingernails dragging slowly along the wood. The doll was inside her house the next morning, sitting at the kitchen table, same blank stare, same wooden grin. She was certain she hadn't brought it in. She threw it away. That night, it appeared in the hallway. She tried everything, locking it in a closet, tossing it in a dumpster, even driving it to a river and dropping it in. But every night, it returned, a little closer to her bed each time. Then came the dreams. She saw a girl, maybe 10 years old, dressed in 1800s-style clothes, standing alone in the other unit, crying, whispering things like, "He won't let me leave," And he lives in the walls. Sarah would wake up with bruises on her arms, scratches on her legs, her sheets ripped and damp with sweat. Desperate, she broke into the vacant side of the duplex. The smell hit her first: mildew, rot, something worse. The wallpaper was peeled back in places, claw marks etched into the plaster. In the bedroom closet, she found a hatch behind an old coat rack. It led to a crawl space filled with dozens of small wooden dolls, identical to the one that kept returning to her. Each one was carved with a different face, different expression, but the same wide eyes. One doll for every tenant, every visitor who had ever crossed the threshold. In the corner of the crawl space, she saw something move. A man, or what used to be one. Gaunt, pale, with eyes hollow and empty, his mouth stitched shut crudely with black thread. He didn't speak. He just reached for her, slowly. Sarah fled the house that night and never returned. The police found her car crashed into a guardrail 5 miles away, her front seat soaked with blood, but no body. Just a single doll left on the dashboard, wearing a dress identical to the one Sarah had worn the night before. The duplex is still there, empty. But locals swear that every few nights at exactly 2:12 a.m., you can hear pacing behind the walls. And if you look closely, you might find a small wooden doll left just outside your door, waiting for you to take it inside.
Story number 4.
There was a family, a mother, father, and their young daughter named Emily, who moved into a newly built suburban home. It was one of those perfect little houses with freshly painted walls and a lush green lawn, located in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of town. The neighbors were friendly, the school was just a short walk away, and everything seemed ideal for a fresh start. At first, everything was peaceful. Emily was happy in her new room, her toys neatly arranged on the shelves and her bed covered with a soft pink blanket. But then the noises started. It began as faint sounds, scratching, tapping, coming from inside the walls. The parents assumed it was just the house settling, something that happens in every new home. But as the days went by, the noises grew louder, more distinct, as if someone or something was moving around inside the walls, trying to get out. One evening, the family sat down for dinner when they heard something from the kitchen. A glass crashed to the floor, followed by a loud thud, as though something had fallen off the counter. The mother, Annabelle, went to check, but found nothing out of place. She simply assumed it was the wind or perhaps a rodent, but Emily was visibly shaken. "Mama, the man is here," she whispered, clutching her doll tightly. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Annabelle asked, her voice filled with concern. "The man in the walls," Emily said, her voice small and trembling. "He talks to me when it's dark." That night, Emily refused to sleep in her room. She claimed that the man with hollow eyes would come to her window and whisper to her, telling her to let him in. Annabelle brushed it off as an overactive imagination, the kind that children sometimes have. But something about Emily's eyes told her this was more than just a bad dream. The next day, Annabelle decided to investigate. She noticed strange marks near the baseboards of Emily's room, scuff marks that seemed out of place, as if something had been dragged along the floor. Curious, she pried at the baseboard, revealing a small hidden door. It was tightly sealed, the wood worn and old, but it opened with a creak when she applied pressure. Inside was a tiny dark space, a crawl space hidden behind the walls. And inside that space, a small bundle of old, tattered clothing. And beneath it, something that made Annabelle's blood run cold. A pile of bones. It was a child's remains, barely recognizable, scattered and covered in dust. There was no mistaking it. The bones were too small to belong to anyone other than a child. Panicked, Annabelle screamed for her husband, and they quickly called the police. The officers arrived and began searching the house, trying to make sense of what they'd found. They discovered that the home had been built on land that had once been the site of an old orphanage, a place that had burned down decades ago under mysterious circumstances. The rumors surrounding the orphanage had always been chilling. Children who went missing, strange disappearances, unexplained deaths. But no one had ever confirmed the truth. As the police conducted their investigation, Emily's behavior became increasingly erratic. She refused to go near her room, screaming whenever she saw the walls, as if something inside them was watching her. And then, one night, she vanished. The parents searched frantically, calling her name through the house, but there was no sign of her. It wasn't until the next morning, when Annabelle entered Emily's room to look for clues, that she found it. Emily's doll, sitting perfectly still on the bed. In the doll's lap was a small scrap of paper, and when Annabelle unfolded it, she found a message scrawled in crayon. He said I could come play with him now. The family never returned to the house. It was left abandoned, the windows dark and empty, and the front yard overtaken by weeds. The new owners moved in shortly after, but it didn't take long for them to leave as well. The house seemed cursed, haunted by the child who had once lived there and the horrors buried in the walls. And if you ever walk past that old house at night, you might hear it, soft tapping, a scraping sound against the walls, as if someone is trying to get out. The whispers of the man, calling to anyone who dares to listen. But no one dares to stay long enough to hear the rest of the story.